Robert Spencer here for Jihad Watch, a program of the David Horowitz Freedom Center and for the Center for Security Policy. I spoke at Stanford University recently, and Stanford administrators and leftist students made sure that as few people as possible heard me. Now, in The Coming of the Third Reich, historian Richard J. Evans explains how in the early days of National Socialist Germany, stormtroopers, Nazi brown shirts, organized campaigns against unwanted professors in the local newspapers and staged mass disruptions of their lectures. And here we are again. In the days before I arrived on campus, the student-run Stanford Daily and Stanford Review published article after article denouncing me in the most lurid terms. It was claimed that I give license to the oppression of Jews and that Muslims at Stanford were endangered by my work. It was charged that I have incited a mass murderer and approved of restricting the right to vote. My work was characterized without any specific examples of being not only inaccurate, but also inflammatory, offensive, hateful, and dishonest. But that was nothing compared to what Stanford administrators had ready for the event itself. Nancy Howe, the Associate Dean and Director of Student Activities and Leadership, and Snehal Naik, the Assistant Dean and Associate Director of Student Activities and Leadership, made sure that the hall was packed with students who had no intention of attending the lecture at all. They were only there to sabotage the event by denying seats to people who actually wanted to attend. They even kept out some members of the College Republicans, the group that was sponsoring the event. The fascist students stood up and walked out after just a few minutes of hearing me. Then after the walkout, Howe and Naik refused to allow in people who actually wanted to attend and denied repeated requests that they open the doors. They also refused to allow the Young America's Foundation to stream the event, clearly because they knew what was in the offing and did not want video going out live that would show just how much Stanford has deteriorated and how opposed it is to free discourse. I had no contact with Howe. Naik greeted me, however, with great warmth and affability and actually said, "We're glad you're here." Oleaginous insincerity oozed from his every pore. Belying his unctuous demeanor, he was so unyielding, however, that at the end of the event, when college Republicans who have been bullied and victimized by Stanford administrators all through this process of having me speak, and egregiously and repeatedly smeared in the Stanford Daily and other student publications, asked him if some of the members who had not been allowed in could now come in for a group photo. He refused to allow even that. At that point I asked him if he'd always been a fascist or had just become one recently. He looked embarrassed, and he should be embarrassed. Videos showed Nancy Howe happily circulating among the Stanford students walking out of the event and patting them on the back and chatting with them. She appears later again grimacing as I criticize Stanford President Mark Tessier-Levine and Provost Persis Drell for failing to teach or defend the freedom of speech and for acting to crush dissenting opinions. With Howe stage managing the disruption of the event this obviously, it's clear now why she refused to allow streaming. She didn't want her engineering of Stanford students disrupting the event to be caught on video. But it was. Fascism has no place on university campuses, or at least it shouldn't, but thanks to administrators such as Nancy Howe and Snehal Naik, Mark Tessier-Levine and Persis Drell and so many others like them all over the nation, it is dominant. A sane university would fire these administrators immediately. However, it is likely that they are not responsible, but are just reflecting the zeitgeist and maybe even executing orders from higher up. It is the president of Stanford, Tessier-Levine, and Persis Drell, the provost, who should be fired, but it's much more likely that they will be lauded, hailed, and celebrated by their peers for their denial of free inquiry. I'm Robert Spencer.